Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. My partner steps aside yet again. And for 30 years, I have been coming forward in various ways to him. And for 30 years, the message really has not varied that much. You learn that the history that he presents of when I came in is a history of love. When he sat in the chair for the first time, he points out that there was no message, that I did not introduce myself, but I did. Some have said, well, who are you really? And we've discussed the who idea. And the who idea is not actually a paradigm from the other side of the veil. There is no who in a group. And so you say, well, Kryon, that means you're a group. And the answer is not really. Because when you look at a group, there's a finite idea. Or in your linearity, you'll ask all the linear questions no matter what we say. Well, how big is the group? How many numbers are in the group? And the answer is always yes. Can you have one energy that sits in a room and represents the entire galaxy? How big is the group? Can you have one idea that goes everywhere in the universe? How big is the group? That is what you're facing when you talk about the things on that which is where you're from. And so when you talk about how magnificent you might be, you limit that. As good as it is, and as wonderful as it sounds, that you are not born dirty and you're not here to survive or suffer and you are magnificent, you still limit it to being magnificent on the planet. No idea. Magnificent in front of God is unbelievable to you. If I showed you your magnificence, it would be how big is a group? Because your magnificence spreads into all that is. Because you are one with all things which are magnificent. And it means that as you sit there, you're not only known by God, you're magnificent in front of God. Mother, as you look at your child, you can't help but look at you in your child. Every mother does. The child is new, fresh from your womb. You're holding it. You start to bathe it. All of the things. The child looks at you, and you can't help but say, you were in me a while ago, and now you're out here. You're part of me. You really are. You have my hands, perhaps. You have my nose. Your family. That's the metaphor when God looks at you. You've heard that, have you not, in the image of God? Born in the image of God, created in the image of God. That is the love energy. That's the image. Instead of born with God's nose, it's born with God's love. But that's how God sees you. That's the magnificence. The mother looks at the child, sees only magnificence and only love. For those first, especially few weeks, understanding where the child came from, that it was nothing and now it's everything, and it's so much love, and it's family, and it's magnificent. That's God in you. That really has not been transmitted to you by many of those who could have done so. But it's becoming now intrinsic, that is innate. It's being transmitted by a core truth that you're starting to receive inside. not necessarily from other people, not necessarily from someone in charge of spirituality. It's something you know. Do you know how individual you are? Not just in your magnificence. There is an individuality here that is so remarkable because the room is filled with old souls. Yesterday we went into this, and we invite you to listen to that message. We told you that old souls have things in common. And the things that they have in common are often caused by what you've experienced in the past. And in an old energy, the things you have in common were suffering, were war, were disappointments, were fear. And in this generation, the first one that has crossed the marker into a new consciousness, you are not here by accident. You planned it. You planned it. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, dear ones, you planned on being here now to experience the shift so that when you come in again, you'll know what it is and continue. And when you continue, you're in a new energy. Right now, you're in a new energy, but battling the old. When you come in again, there's no old to battle. So if there's a message today from your ancestors, the ones who are standing in the room, if there's a message, and there is, here it is. The battle is over. We said that any of you who are bothered by the energies of your past lives that come through your Akashic record and touch you in this life and give you fear or anxiety or the lack of hope or self-worth, that there are tools to drop these, and those tools are mainly from your ancestors. The ones in the room, the ones who are waiting and asking, when are you going to ask to drop it? Again, intent is the key. Affirmations are the tools. And what happens with you is beautiful. Is that these old energies start to drop away. But that's not the message of this. We want to remind you, the battle is over. And the battle is what you had to do the last time you were here as an old soul. Old souls who end up on this planet are souls who have been here over and over and over, and many of you have awakened to the core truth. And you find yourself joining obscure groups that will hide this very, very well. But they're outside of the common groups of spirituality. And so you hide that, but they are core. And they know that consciousness can change things. In an old energy, if you change things with your consciousness, they'll call it magic. And then you'll be killed for it. So there are a lot of those who are old souls who would never come to a meeting like this. Because the last time they opened that door, it didn't turn out well. We call them closet light workers. Many of you have them as partners who are not here. Good people, good human beings who have integrity and love, but not ready to open that door. But you have, and you sit here, and there's no judgment for anyone who hasn't. But for those who did and do, by their own free will and choice, there are things you should know. The battle of dark and light has changed greatly. And if you have watched this planet grow in these last few years, you realize something is taking place that you didn't expect. If you just want to make it black and white, I'll give it to you. Whereas dark always got the leading edge of the battle. They always showed up with more troops, metaphorically. In this energy, they don't. Because there is more light now than there has ever been before. That's a metaphor for compassion and integrity and a higher consciousness starting to literally invade the darkness of this planet. And in the societies which are freer, it's happening first. And this is one of them. And so you have already seen some remarkable things. Dark situations, even between men and women in inappropriate circumstances which have been the same for hundreds of years, is starting now to be exposed. And you realize they are not women's issues, they are human issues of integrity. And they are starting to enhance themselves so light is winning. And over, you're starting to see that. Whereas for hundreds of years it was kept a secret, you couldn't be exposed, now it's being exposed every day. Did you notice? Inappropriate things happening in spiritual systems between leaders and children. Horror stories that affect children forever, all of their lives. Things that have been happening for literally hundreds of years are now wide open, being exposed. Don't you find that coincidental? 2 weeks ago, or less, for I've said this many times, I told you the exposure of darkness is at hand. I've told you that is excellent news. It is magnificent news because it starts to clean up that place where you live. But if you're not aware of truly what is happening here, there are those who sit and wring their hands and say, there's never been a darker time. Take a look at what we're finding out. And so there's great fear instead of great celebration because they don't understand that everything that is taking place was always there. And now it's starting to be revealed. I said 2 weeks ago, stand by for the big one. And literally, days after I said that, it appeared. Now my partner's going to talk about the field later today. And the field is how I was able to tell you this, because the potentials sit there. Not predictions, but potentials already being generated are sitting there. And with free choice, they will appear. And one of them, the biggest one that is out of integrity, is human slavery and trafficking. And I told you it is bigger than you think, funded by those with a great deal of money. And you can go back and hear that channel, for we've given it many times. But most specifically, just 2 weeks ago. And we said, soon you're going to see the exposure, and you're going to be shocked at how deep it is, how well it's funded, and who's involved. And you were. This is the field. This is the tip of the iceberg. It will open more, and that will open more, and you're going to find it all over the world. And there will be those who are shocked at the horror of it and the slavery of stealing children and having them as sex slaves all of their life and worse. And when they get too old to perform, they're eliminated. This is a horror story, dear ones. It's been here for years and years and years, and it has been participated in and funded by those you didn't expect, even some that you won't believe. It's going to be exposed. It's ugly. And every time you hear it, I want you to know that it represents a group of children who are going to be saved because it's been revealed. And that's the light over the dark. And when you see it, I want you to touch your heart and say, thank you, Spirit, that light is winning on this planet, instead of looking at it and saying, isn't that awful and isn't that horrible? It's always been awful and horrible. It's time to celebrate the revelation of an ending. That is what's going on. You're so individual. The battle is over. And that battle is you fighting the dark energy. That's what's over, because the dark energy is being eliminated by your light of being here. Did you get that? Your light. So you don't have to go around clearing things unless you want to. And you don't have to have the meetings where then you will send energy to this or that. You can still do that, but I'll tell you, it's being done automatically because you think about it. That's consciousness over darkness. That's what we've been teaching for 30 years. The paradigm of dealing with light and dark is starting to change. This will be controversial to many who have then been part of how it's worked all of their lives. But I will say to them, can you put that aside and understand that the light is coming out? The sun is coming out. The light is here. And that is what is going to start to change. You're going to have to deal with that differently and the darkness differently. And with the consciousness of the old soul that you have, that's powerful. And you're doing it. That's the message. It's a good one. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. The group sits in another park that is beautiful. A slight rain occasionally falls, and the wind is occasionally strong. But this is Gaia at its best, dear one. You could sit here for a very long time, and it doesn't get old. We've talked about the serenity that is here, and you start realizing that this planet has places that talk to you, and this is one of them. I am going to present to you in this teaching some very high concepts. Concepts that this planet is not really truly participating in at this time. But they are concepts which you are now broaching and starting to understand. Before I even begin, I ask you, what is your opinion? Is human nature static or changing? And if you ask the psychologists, you ask those in the past, they will say that human nature appears to always be the same. And this is the difference between old and new energy, an energy which is now in the era or dispensation of compassion. You've really moved that which is your state of consciousness as a planet. I again say to you, there are historians that will tell you you are long overdue for another war. And they look back and they see the consciousness of the planet in cycles, and they count the cycles by the wars. I have told you before that this is changing dramatically. Suddenly you have consensus around the planet that does not want these things. The consensus of the people is starting to work its way to leadership. A new human nature is truly starting to develop. The ones who would see it first are the ones who may offer the subjects of your television shows. They're starting to change what they do. It's becoming softer in so many areas. And this is due to a changing desire of what people want to see. It's happening. Energy, dear ones, is well defined by physics. There are many laws of energy. And up to now, none of those have applied to consciousness itself. But in the last decade, consciousness has been seen and proven as a part of energy. That changes everything. For if consciousness is energy, some of the physics of energy must belong to consciousness. One of those rules is that energy cannot be destroyed or created. It can only change. And the energy of human nature is a state of consciousness, and it's beginning to change. The first law of thermodynamics comes into play. When a person passes away or dies, everyone has looked at that and said it's the end. But now science is saying, no, it isn't. Because now consciousness is energy. Therefore, the energy has to go somewhere. It's the first time in history that scientists have decided that there's a soul. The soul is the consciousness, and it somehow goes back to the universe. I give you these things so you will understand what's coming. Some have said, Kryon, I don't want you to talk about science. I want you to talk about love. About the esoterics that I'm so discipled in, that I so love. I am telling you this, that the creator of the universe is the great physicist. That the creator of the universe which lives in you is the creator of the planet. The very dirt that you walk on has a system, and you're part of it. You cannot separate yourself from these things. If you do, you float above all of them in a way that does not help the planet at all. We talked about peace. We talked about going to the wall, as we say. How do you have peace in your life? Park the car and peel the onion, we said. And that means you stop. You stop everything. You stop going from A to B. You stop thinking about what you're doing and simply be. Now that is called meditation in so many places on this planet. And there are so many meditators who will gather together for hours. In some cultures, that is the staple of what they do. They meditate. Peeling the onion was the description of tearing away all of the biases, or perhaps what you've been told is correct or not. Of being tolerant of what you see all around you. Of changing your mind from what those told you about a certain person or a certain belief system. The ability to see God in all things and in every person, no matter what they believe or how they act. We talked about going to that wall, dear ones, and what that meant was you meditate and you meditate and you meditate and you find peace. Every meditator knows what that feels like, how long it takes, and you go there. And you drink it. That's why you're there. You keep going back for more. And you drink it. And I'm using the word drink because that is how you're seeing it. You're seeing peace as a resource, like you would see water. You're thirsty for peace, and so you go to this place where you meditate and drink it up. The wall, however, is the fact that you never go beyond it. You don't have the concept of taking peace and putting it upon yourself and leaving with it. When you go to the place where you eat the food to sustain yourself, the wonderful cafe or restaurant, it's not in your consciousness to take all the food and bring it back. You consume it for the machine that is the linearity of your body. That is how peace has been treated. And we start with peace because that has to be the beginning. For the light worker, or anyone who is becoming more enlightened on the planet, to be able to have it and not be consumed with the drama around you, no matter what you see. That leads, dear ones, to the others, the compassion, the forgiveness. Peace is the first one. But you linearize it. You go, and you sit in it, you drink from it, and you leave. And you come again, and you come again, and you come again. Cultures have been consumed with this because that peace drink is beautiful. And you love it. And it seems to solve the problems within your own life. But does it solve the problems in others' lives for you to drink the peace for yourself? And the answer is not really. You can have a peace conference and together create coherence. And for a moment or two, you may change your area. You might even change your weather. Consciousness is energy. It can do that. But dear ones, you don't take it home with you. I'm going to give you the beginning of the answer. It's not a process as much as it is a concept. How you perceive this is critical. Do you understand what I'm telling you? You must go to this magic place where you find the peace, and instead of hitting the wall, you're going to become the wall. That is a concept that is remarkably high. Most don't even understand what I mean, to become the wall. Imagine that wall that you hit is filled with beautiful energy, and part of that energy is peace. Imagine the wall is something you can chip away at, perhaps even take a tool and fill your bags filled with something in the wall, and you take it home with you. That is a linear concept, but it's the best one we have to give you a non-linear, beautiful process called becoming peace. The result of this, when you take it home, is that that place you have when you meditate becomes you all the time, or at least most of the time. Even when you sleep, it affects your dreams. Every waking hour, you see things differently than before because you've taken a piece of the wall home. That wall has been called the veil. It often separates that which is human consciousness from sacred consciousness. Quite often you have to have some human being who is trained to take you between those states, and it's not needed, not in this energy. You have the tools inside you, in the magnificence you are, to go to that wall and take a piece of it home. How do you do it? It has to do with belief. We have said this before, is the first thing you must do is cognize it. Now, cognizing is a word that means you assume it to be true. It is true. You cognize gravity. If someone asked, Do you believe in gravity? You will laugh. Perhaps you will drop something and laugh some more. Gravity is not something you believe in, and yet it's invisible. You believe it because you see it all the time. You've cognized it. You must cognize this idea that peace can come home with you. And then you begin. When you're in that state, you become multidimensional, and any meditator knows this. It's a feeling that you cannot pretend to have. You know it when you have it. And it's your consciousness that spreads out almost to infinity, and you feel it. That's the peace that you drink in. That's the wall. At that moment, dear ones, you start to cognize that this can be you. You start to see it, and here is where the affirmations begin. Affirmations have been created so that that consciousness that you have, which is multidimensional, can begin to apply it to the brain, which is logical. Scientists will argue where the sacredness of intuition and creativity come from. I have told you it's the triad of the heart, the brain, and the pineal. You must understand you are using all the parts, not just your logic. You cannot intellectualize this, ever, because that is a brain function of synapse and logic. This is a heart concept that has to be then trained into your brain. Affirmations are the answer. The first thing I would ask you to do when you go to that place, you can say to yourself out loud or internally, I am peace. I have peace. I will take peace from this place, and it becomes me. I affirm that I do not leave this place alone, but I take something with me that is beyond what I had before. You create your own affirmations that work for you, and you say them each time you go there, to that wall. Remember the other P words we gave you. Persistence. That means practice. And the other word? All of these P words we give you, important. The other word? Patience. This is not going to happen automatically. You are taking a multidimensional concept and starting to work with it in a linear form. Dear ones, that is hard. But I sit in front of those who will feel what I'm speaking of. How do you define love? Is it with your brain? Can you define it? How do you define intuition or creativity? You cannot. These are multidimensional things, just like finding peace. Right now, as we sit, we're about to end this channel. But not before we join together in the languages, all that are here. We're going to say the words, I am peace. Let's do it together right now. I am peace. Again, I am peace. Can you feel in your intuitive selves how this works with your brain and your emotion? Let's say it again. I am peace. Some of you will get chills because you're sitting in a peaceful place, exercising, going to the wall right now. You're going to change your life, dear ones, if you are serious about this exercise. Some will ask, well, is this the exercise for compassion? And the answer is no. You must have the peace first. Compassion has to be practiced in the real world. In that car that you had to park. Compassion is not when you stop. Compassion is compassionate action when you're in that vehicle, when you go from A to B. It's something you do in the real world with peace. I hope this has brought you closer to understanding the wall and the new tool in this new energy. Light really is coming out, dear ones, into a dark world. There's only peaceful things to look at. May you remember this time. And so it is.